I've rewritten this video a few times, trying to figure out how best to structure it with Patreon input. We talk a lot on this channel about how games feel to control and how the visuals align with that feeling. I think game animation can be boiled down into two distinct talking points for the player: when you're in control of a character and when you're not. This can be as simple as pressing right to move forward and letting go to stop. When you engage in movement, you are taking control of the animation, and when you disengage, then you let go and the game takes over. Alongside this, we also have that same kind of thing for enemies and bosses. So how does this work in Silksong? Well, I think we should frame this video around a particular experience which allows us to break things down for better analysis. Before we get to that though, I just want to take a look at this game's overall design principles, which I think aid the game's animation systems. One thing I like about Team Cherry's design philosophy with their character designs is just how simple they are. They really embrace the economy of design. Characters have really clear structure and really strong silhouettes. They tend to be flatly coloured and thick outlines. And I think this feels in a really good contrast with the game's beautiful rendered backgrounds and objects and environments. And it just gives that really nice cartoony feel. And it just has a really stripped back approach to everything. And I think what details are left are really important. Hornet's pointy head makes it really easy to identify the direction she's facing and allows for cool looking actions that help you feel oriented. One thing to note here is the height difference between the Lone Knight from Hollow Knight and Hornet. While this little bug dude from the previous game was quite squat and square, making his hitbox easy to move around, Hornet is taller, and I think this changes a lot of aspects about her movement when compared to Hollow Knight. For instance, her height against platforms and such mean this ledge scramble mechanic was introduced. And for me, this feels so natural, like how Mercury Steam gave Samus the slide mechanic, or how Evening Star gave Sonic the drop dash. It feels weird to not be able to do it. I haven't as yet completed the game. I'm near the end of Act 2, so there may very well be animations that I haven't yet seen and cannot comment on, but that's okay, I'm prepared to take that hit. I think I've seen enough to make this video with an informed approach. Of the gameplay loops that exist in this game, such as upgrade discovery, boss defeats, and running back to areas and such, I'd like to take a look at a particular experience. I'd like to take a look at my run back to and battle with Trobio. I had so much fun fighting this guy, I threw my controller at the wall. I've had a lot of bad experiences with previous characters and bosses having surprise endings. Look at you, last guard. But Trobio's ending is just fantastic, and it really fits in with the whole character performance thing. I'm getting ahead of myself. First things first. Let's start at this particular bench where I found myself, near the weird character that wants these cylinder items. Hornet sits calmly at her bench. We'll get to know more about this character as we go on through the game, but right now this is a rare moment of peace before we get into the action. We can see her gently breathing from the movement of her dress and the rising and falling of her head, and she occasionally looks around in a vaguely startled manner, keeping herself on guard. Something that's nice and easy to keep a very simple action like this alive is a thing called overshooting, which is a form of follow-through action. Rather than just settling on the last frame of the action, you overshoot that position slightly before settling, and it makes it feel just slightly more natural. Couple this with a slight anticipation, and you've got yourself a sweet little motion. Now, as I'm always saying, responsiveness is everything in video games. The animation needs to align with that. The experience your player will have will be completely crafted around the responsiveness of the character. That's going to shape their experience. Hornet jumps down from the bench as soon as you press a button to move. It's just a frame from her falling animation, and this is followed up by her normal landing animation, which itself is nice and pretty. It's got this nice little arc that her head follows, this little bouncing drop of her dress which wiggles as it comes to a stop, and we enter her looped idle mode, which is a gentle bob up and down, which makes the dress have this slight bob as well, though with a slight delay from the body to give it a nice bit of asymmetry and texture, and this is called overlapping. In this clip, I used the dash move to push off straight away. This is instant. The second you press the dash button, you enter the first frame of the run with the start of the effects flash already coming out from behind. The dash effect, you'll notice, is a slower frame rate than the speed of the game, which is 60 FPS. This effect is likely playing at 24 frames per second, or a bit lower. Hornet's running animation is also something low, between 12 and 24, but her on-screen in-game movement across screen is still 60 frames per second. So this dash effect is over within 8 drawings. But on top of that, you have these light particles in this dust cloud that's kicked up. Man, how to sell a hard dash from a starting position. Now, what's interesting and only notable when you slow it down like this is you can see the changeover from the dash animation to the sprinting animation, and it's this little bit here where she changes the position of her needle. This is where the dash ends and the sprinting takes over. It is essentially invisible to the naked eye. When you sprint off ledges, you will transition to this spinning animation, and it's very subtle, but you can see the transition just here. Her head is already in this low down position from the sprint, because you would likely do that so you are more aerodynamic, which leads nicely into the somersault, her head not needing to travel far to be in this position, which leaves us with this nice, smooth but brief animation, which then switches to the falling animation. The sprint itself is very nice. It makes a nice contrast to the walking animation. It has a nice rhythm to it, and then this itself creates a nice variation in rhythm to general movement throughout the game. If you tapped out the rhythm of movement, you'd likely have a nice texture with short gaps, long gaps, medium gaps, and this creates an enjoyable experience. The air dash is slightly different to the floor dash. She squidges in a bit and has a slight arc downwards. She can also dash downwards with the same thing going on. If she falls from high enough, she'll do a hero land with a thud and a screen shake. This interrupts control of the character, so you may not want to do this all the time, but it's a feel-good move. What I like is that if you land while running, you will have a transition into the running where you have this dipped down running animation, which is actually just reusing your standard running animation from standing still, as you have this sort of little trip as you begin. This is really good and cost effective and a really great way to reuse frames, and is a very elegant solution to the workload. Quick deviation here, I've realised that Hornet is actually really Castlevania coded. If we compare Hornet to Alucard from Symphony of the Night, we can see there's a lot of similar moves and animations. And this made me realise that Hollow Knight and Silksong are one of the few Metroidvanias to actually embrace the Castlevania side of the genre's name, other than just Metroid. While sprinting, you can perform this long jump in an upward arc. It's one of those rare times we get to see anticipation in a jump in video games. If we had this all the time, it would totally craft a very particular experience by having that delay. It's why the original Castlevania feels the way it does. But it doesn't mean it has to be absent. When we add the anticipation here, it does a few things. It creates this nice rhythm to the movement, it allows you a chance to get ready for that action, and it means the move isn't just an easy, straightforward button push. This is a slightly harder move, and adding in this anticipation is almost like a buffer to make sure you know what you're doing. It's subtle, but I think we would feel it if it wasn't there. Also, there's some nice use of 3D space around Hornet with this move. There's a few variations of falling and jumping which keeps things fresh. Again, I can see why this game took 8 years to make. When you halt your dash, it's quite sudden, and you go into this pose. What I've noticed about the dash stop is that you can nearly always just stop before a ledge. I think this acts as a tiny window for if you're going to fall or stop, and I think it just keeps things tighter for gameplay purposes. And when you hit your cocoon, there's a slight frame hold, and then a bright flash with this really nice effect that emanates out, and you can just see the interface animation in the top left as the silk spins full again. From this run back, we can see that posing is everything. The dynamic positions that Hornet is in really kind of tells us that she's this strong, reliable character and is eager to get to her next destination while keeping on guard. Hornet moves in very tight and responsive ways, and the only way to make all of these moves flow together nicely with very little transitioning frames is to make sure the poses for all these brief moves all connect together in the same direction. It could be easy for all of this to simply become noise and for it all to fall apart and look like a mess with the amount of movement Hornet is capable of. But Team Cherry have meticulously designed all the poses so that they all read clearly and flow into other moves without looking garish. Okay, so now we're at the boss fight. This took me ages, as did every other boss. The use of effects in this game, much like Hollow Knight, is very well done. We have this build-up and a big fanfare for Trobio's entrance as he bursts from beneath the stage floorboards, calling his own name Trobio as he does so. That, or he's saying Royal or something, I don't know. This guy is very in love with his own performances. The fireworks are blinding and the screen shake absolutely sells this as a heavy move to be avoided. Everything about how Trobio moves is telling us he's a performer, an entertainer, and plays with misdirection. The way he holds his arms up, as if to say, "Are you not entertained?" We're already seeing some anticipation and follow-through frames of animation here, which are the same piece of animation. The little bending action is the shorthand for him beginning a jump or landing from a jump, initiating or halting his spin, or launching down beneath floorboards. That's a classic way to tidy up your process, reusing certain frames of animation for similar actions. If I wanted to be efficient with my process, I would absolutely use the same action for beginning a jump and ending a jump. So this particular action already acts as a tiny window for a number of moves he can perform, and it's on you as a player to recognise these poses and anticipate what the move might be. For instance, this anticipation could be the start of a tall jump, an explosive jump, or a spin. What I like is that there's an air version of this as well, which aligns with the possibility of him throwing some bombs either in the air or on the ground. Haha, I caught you out. That's not an air version, it's the exact same frames for when he's on the ground. That's another nice efficient use of animation frames. This isn't uncommon, this is another classic tactic for saving resource, as seen here in Castlevania and Sparkster, where the action animation is the same whether you're in the air or on the ground. There's a few other examples of these tiny windows of anticipation throughout Trobio's moveset as well, which leads to a really nice layered encounter where sets of actions can thread through in any number of ways. What I love about Trobio is that he's always looking to divert your attention somewhere else so he can set up his next move, and you have to be on the lookout for these tiny windows of anticipation. This is, again, where posing is important. If this pose leaned too heavily on being a ground attack, then it would look a little weird being used in the air, and vice versa. But, like I mentioned earlier, the shape and design language of characters in this game allow for strong silhouettes to do a lot of the work. Trobio, like Hornet, is top heavy, with a big bulk on the top third of the character and tiny spindly bug legs. Honestly, one of the great things about boss battles in particular is that your attention is always being diverted away somewhere, which allows you to simply forego making any clear sense of what you're seeing and just accepting it as it is. So, as I was saying, Trobio is this performer, so when he performs certain actions like throwing a bomb, he has this really strong, exaggerated ta-da kind of pose, whereas another boss might have a traditional arm pullback and lurching forward. It might be the same amount of frames, but they look different and signify different things about the character. Okay, so this is a little bit of a deviation and probably, a bit too deep to go into right now, so take this as a bit of extra research if you want to look into it. But semiotics is the study of signs and signals. You have the signified and the signifier. For instance, on your phone, you have a picture of a telephone, which is the signifier, but what it means, making a call, is the signified. Trobio comes in and makes a grand gesture, which is the signifier, and that makes us think of stage plays, which is the signified. This is where the characters in Silksong start to feel really unique and alive. We interpret something about the characters in the game, which is doing a lot of work up here, points to head, don't read that bit out loud. Any other character making these same poses might make us think of different associations. This is why I love Trobio. When he's landing, evading, jumping, or even just taking a brief moment of not attacking, he's being very clear with actions that he's a performer. Team Cherry have taken care to ensure this is how he comes across. I mean, look at this second phase summoning. I'm not classy enough to recognise this as anything from theatre or ballet or anything, but it has this final dismount kind of vibe to it, like he's really ready to step up his game and give you one hell of a performance. And, like in Hollow Knight, you have these vast emanating auras that pulse outward with a screen shake that sell that action even more. His final hit response is, in keeping with his character, a very over-the-top death. I love this little twist. After my slip up with the last judge's twist ending, I wasn't taking any chances and avoided him as best I could in case I still took damage. But this is Trobio's encore, his final farewell to the stage and the audience, you. So I missed this on my first playthrough because I just kind of left the arena, but this is a great Easter egg on Team Cherry's part. If you defeat him and leave the room without going off screen and come back, he plays dead, so you'll catch him just kind of pretending to fall back to be dead again. And these are the kind of animation details I live for, and that's fantastic. You can only see this once you come off screen and come back, he goes. But who knows, maybe he's not dead, I don't know. I think what makes Trobio interesting is that he has little to give away in terms of anticipating moves. This is traditionally called telegraphing, where a boss or enemy will anticipate their move with an appropriate animation so you, the player, can read what is about to happen and respond accordingly. But when you have less build-up time for this anticipation, it becomes harder to read, and thus harder to respond to and harder to fight. If you compare this to Tree Hag, who has these big moves that show she's about to make a swipe, you can see and feel the difference. If anything, the moves you do are giving Trobio clues as to your next attack. You are telegraphing to him, like when he wisps away here. It's very frustrating. Lace does the same bloody thing too. So, when you're attacking, this is what needs to feel the snappiest. These games are built around lightning reflexes, and your animation has got to reflect that. For instance, when Hornet swipes her needle, you don't see that swipe. All you see is that single frame of anticipation, and the next frame is her in this follow-through pose with the needle catching up. We don't even see the action. The effects animation is showing the swipe happening. In fact, the attack has probably already landed when you hit the button, before any of the animation or effects start. That's how snappy it needs to be. This means if, for whatever reason, the attack needs to be interrupted, that's fine, mate, it hasn't even happened. Other moves will have the same level of response and the appropriate level of animation. There are so many pieces of animation in this game that I simply can't cover them all, and like I said, I can see why this game took 8 years to make. 7? 8? There are so many variations to all the various moves, and there are so many moves, and so many Easter eggs, and so many characters. Like, it's insane the amount of animation that this very small team have accomplished. There's this whole section in the slab if you get caught where Hornet is without her cloak, and she can perform most of the same moves she's been able to do so far, just without her cloak or needle, and it makes me wonder if she's animated like this from the start, and then the needle and cloak are animated separately and added, or if cloakless Hornet is the one that's animated separately. I feel like if this was my game, I would probably find it easier to animate Hornet without her cloak for all moves, and have the cloak on top, so that if you enter the slab at different points, there might be some moves that you don't have. Pretty sure I've seen a sprite sheet with Hornet with her dress on, so maybe the slab section is all unique frames just for that area. Also, I find this kind of cursed, like it's really weird, I can't cope without the dress. But it does give a really cool insight into what's going on under the cloak. It's not all just being made up. However it's done, it's a lot of work either way. Let me just round this video off with some of my favourite animated moments. I like how ants will carry away objects in Hunter's March. I like how the guards are playing with Hornet's stuff in the slab. I like that there's an animation for Hornet putting on her new cloak. I love that you can walk around with the map and the map icon will bob up and down. I like that she has unique animations for when she's low on health. I like that she has this funny turning animation when sprinting. I love all the various animated cutscenes throughout that bookend certain segments and signify an important moment in the game. And apparently Hornet will actually take a nap when she sits on her bed once she gets a house in Bellheart. That's awesome. Let's pick a current patron. Ben Williams. What a lovely chap. Thanks so much. Cool. Well, I'm off. I tried Void Rot and it's a bit rubbish. Bye.